We're live. And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles. We're on live, I believe, this week as we're talking. What is becoming a little bit more of a familiar feeling. I've just had a notification on YouTube, so it is fucking working. But welcome to Gareth and Paul this week, and we're going to look back on the Texas 24-20 win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. A penalty-laden, hard-fought, slugfest, sloppy as shit at times, but we got there in the end. So we're doing, chaps, all right?
All good here. Thanks for having us.
Spot on here as well, thank you.
Oh, good. And I mean, I think we all would have taken 3-1 at the start of the year, right? But it's a bit of a mixed feeling, I suppose, because you think of all the years you haven't started 3-1 or won 3 out of games of all season, but it is 3-1, and I would have taken it. But Gareth, just to kick us off, what's your kind of thoughts really on the way in which we'll get into some of the specifics, and we'll tick them off and why we think we've got issues, and we've got some positives as well. We'll go through them, but when you look at this 3-1, how would you describe the way this team's playing? Because I don't think it's yet to find an identity.
Absolutely. Before season, before we would have went, to be honest with you, like with JJ McCarthy going out and the Vikings not being the team in my eyes. But 3-1, like after the first game, I actually thought we were going to struggle a lot more. But especially against the Bears, I thought we were going to struggle against the Bears. I know it was a tight game, but I still thought that after beating them there, we were going to go on a good run. But beat by the Vikings comprehensively, kind of, and then they go to the Texans. No, they were beaten. So was the division game, you never know what's going to happen. And they beat them instead of 3-1. Can we complain? I don't think we can.
No, and Paul, I suppose if you think of, you've had 3 games where you've had double-digit penalties, a continued issue whereby you try and find ways to get yourself behind the chains, and it's third and long consistently. I suppose you would have taken the 3 wins given the circumstance and given the how much extra you think this team might have to have left in its tank, or be better at execution, consecutive down in and down out to be a better football team than this.
Yeah, I think you can. If you take it back to like just our footy, really, that if a team in the Premier League was putting in these type of performances and winning games, people would go, that's a sign of a top team, a championship potential team, isn't it? Really, you're not playing well, you're giving away stupid stuff, and you're still managing to get a win. Yeah, I think the amount of harm we're doing to ourselves is probably the biggest thing there. And if you took out some of the self-inflicted stuff we're doing, we're probably, we should have probably ran the Vikings closer last week if we took out another 10 penalty game from it. Just a bit frustrating that we're not learning from that, which is the hard bit.
Yeah, and I suppose that the flags, or the consistency of the flags, and the error weren't, I suppose, as bad in some ways this week, until we got to the sort of third quarter, and then it dragged on into the fourth as well, because after the game against Minnesota, it was really difficult to try and kind of be too upset about it, because when you can't just get the ball snapped, it's going to be really limited in what you can judge a performance, because you didn't even get to being functional, and I think that was the kind of frustrating part of that we did, that you can't judge it properly at that point. But this week, in many ways, it kind of went to plan, or went to similar kind of storylines that we've come to expect from this D'Amico team, Paul, and we seem to have an ability to not take leads or be consistent enough, and we're closer to teams that we should beat, and this coming Sunday is going to be a whole different discussion we'll get onto before we wrap up. But we seem to have that ability. We can't pull away from teams for a variety of reasons. If you were to kind of pinpoint someone you think they can improve upon, what would you say that is? Because there is a lot of issues facing this team right now. But what's the main kind of issue you think that when you look back on that performance that it just holds us back?
I think it's just a really simple one in discipline, isn't it? Really, I think it's not just the discipline in some of the flags that get thrown at the line. Again, we spoke the other week, and there were some big plays that got pulled back for penalties. Some of them a bit soft in the Bears game, and then this week again, we had CJ made a really good throw to Diggs in the second half. Would have got a first down, but I think maybe Kenyon Green was ahead of the lineman downfield. It's a silly penalty that probably shouldn't happen. It's on a couple of people, I guess, but it's just a discipline of knowing and coaching there, isn't it? Really, and I think that's got to improve if we feel that we're going to, challenge the likes of Buffalo, take them far, and go to where we want to go. Really. That discipline has to improve,
and I agree with you, and I find it hard to get when you're listening to D'Amico's conference before the game and after, and it's a similar situation now. We just happen to come up against a lesser quality team in terms of offensive output that we did before, and I think it could have gone very differently with a couple of plays, and we'll come back to that, but I find it difficult to get to be frustrated at D'Amico because I know he knows how to coach these guys, and the coaching staff have shown enough, I think, in this year and last year, that they can get where they want to get to with players. But there's an element of, I think, the ill discipline's been so thorough and so consistent through 4 games. I think we've probably got to be realistic amongst us. One in which how much can that be fixed through the season and how much is feasible of that. And then Gareth, I think there's a lot of stuff that we'll probably have to just absorb and perhaps realign our expectations on, because you can't be an ill-disciplined team and win games that you shouldn't win, or even win games that you should win. And for me, the last couple of weeks, I don't know if I was just off of my expectation for where this team could go this season, but I think there's some deep-rooted flaws that may or may not be fixable. And whether it's mentality, whether it's coachability of certain players, whether it's implementation scheme or whatever it is, I don't know if the pre-season wasn't thorough enough, we didn't have enough of the guys on the line or wherever it might be in certain skill positions that just is limiting this team. And there is absolutely a case that every team will take different iterations and improve throughout the season. But that being said, when you watch how we've stumbled to this, and look, this is a luxury problem, I'll take this over the bad days, Gareth. But what's your thoughts on what's fixable and what's not, I suppose, within this season and within these sort of 13 games that we've got left?
I think if you look at the penalties from yesterday's game, I think it's just down to individual errors. Do you know what I mean? Like Kenyon Green was caught downfield, 4 times? 4 times in the first half, wasn't it even? Like that, like no matter what scheme they're wrong, like, there's no chance of him being caught down 4 times. That's not on the coaches, that's on him. Obviously, I'm there with him, but maybe it's because he hasn't been playing, like he was out all last season. And what it was reporting that offense weren't out most of the time. And see, all teams in the NFL weren't putting out their first team offense to give them rest because they think they were doing too much. But this individual, Council is the most penalised player ever through the first 3 games in the whole history of NFL. I heard a stat there earlier on. That's individual holding penalties. That's individuals. You're getting beat by your man. Obviously, they're holding them. Well, they're going to. I don't think that's something to do with coaching. Personally, I think that's something to do with not. Arnie Tunsil's probably one of the best tackles in the game at the moment. Like, him to have 3 holding penalties, was it? In the third quarter, fourth quarter, that's unforgivable. You can't coach that. You can't expect Glenn Cooper any ends are going to go without doing what you should be doing.
Yeah, I think I suppose I go back to the Pittsburgh game last year and the job that Chris Strasser could do and did do with the line when we had Austin Deckers playing at left tackle, we had uh, the other Green playing in at guard, and there was a number of injuries in that game, but they found a way to be serviceable and win the game against a good defensive unit with a kind of top three edge rusher in that unit there, and then there was. So he showed a level of flexibility to work different guys in and the ability to coach them. But yet this start to the season, Paul, I think has been I don't know how much you can fix the run game, because the run game is ultimately at the minute the Achilles heel of this football team. And without that, you're worse on defense because you can't stay on the field for as long as you'd like. You're getting behind the chains. And you're not able to assert yourself in terms of time of possession and dominate the clock. So without the ability to fix the run game, which is a bleed over from last year, and it's a consistent, this is year 2 in this scheme, this should be an improvement. I think, there was flashes of week 1, and I'll be honest, I suppose you believe what you want to believe at times, but it just wasn't, it's just not carried on now. You put Joe Mixon back in that lineup. I don't think they ever thought he was going to play. He was a late kind of fitness admission, but I don't think him alone is enough. His extra vision will give you some extra yards. But I saw a thing today where 23% success rate on rundowns, and that's the lowest in the league. And it's not just bad in terms of our offense; it's bad in terms of all of football, and that's quite a gap to make up. And I don't just believe that's coaching. It's perhaps talent, it's scheme fit, it's players playing together as the front five. And I think there was times yesterday where I thought you're going to have to take Kenyon Green out and put Jared Patterson or whoever's next up in the practice squad back in, because he's just not good enough, and he's missed a lot of time. And he kind of looks a funny body shape to me, to be honest, Kenyon Green. I'm not sure he's ready to hold up, particularly when he gets bull rushed. He looks, I know everybody talked about it with an isolation, how he looked like he improved his body and all that kind of stuff, but there was times I just thought he's not at an NFL level, and he looked like that a little bit in his rookie year as well. I remember the game against Washington at NRG, and he just got bull rushed back and just didn't look like he was able to compete at this level. And I think that's the reality of it, that he's just not able to. He's not at a point, certainly anyway, and it may be confidence, it may be physicality, but it's a long old season. We're only 4 out of the 17 through, and he looked miles off it yesterday. And I think when you look at this totality in a whole of 188 million in contracts, when you've got 4 first-round picks in 2 seconds and a 6 or whatever they gave for Shaq Mason, you include the Tunsil trade, you include all that, there's a hell of a lot of resource gone into this offensive line. And we're just not seeing the output, and that's on the front office just as much as it is the coaching staff. And both the tackles were paid by this regime, but they're not holders from the last. They're not inherited contracts that you have to stomach. This is all by design, and for it to all culminate in a way that's clearly holding this team back, I don't know if you can fix that in season. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think it'll be incredibly difficult. I'm just going through the line in my head and trying to think about how much they played last season. We said about the pre-season previously where, I don't think Tunsil played a single down in pre-season. But then you look at it and Titus Howard didn't finish last season. Really another knee injury. I don't think Scruggs finished last season as well, because I think he got an injury towards the end. Tunsil obviously missed all of the summer. And it's some of the visual stuff you see, isn't it? I think there was a couple after a couple of penalties yesterday where the media people do their thing and panning on Tunsil, and he's chugging for air coming up to the line, and you're like, you don't look like you're in the best condition for be doing this, over and over again, and then that's going to lead into pass protection. It's going to lead into run blocking where he's got to get downfield to put a hit on someone to open up a lane. I think I don't think Joe Mixon is just going to be a fix by himself as well. I think there needs to be some improvement there, but I don't know. I think we have to be with the play calling we had yesterday, I think we have to be careful that we think Cam Akers can do everything Mixon can do, because at times it looked better with Taylor and Abungawale coming in and doing their bits and running some hard yards and, doing some nasty running rather than trying to put people in space, and that kind of worked a little bit better, I think, at times. But it's definitely not going to be one thing that fixes it all. I think it's got to be a combination of improvement at line and then somebody coming in who's going to run some nasty yards, because I think Akers probably got tackled for losses 5 or 6 times yesterday, I'd have thought, just going back over it. And some of that's on him, some of that's on the line. So.
Yeah, I think we need to stop running on early downs, and I think that for me that's the key, because that's what's putting you behind the chains. And if you can set up the run with the pass, almost the counterintuitive kind of outlook on it, then that will then allow you to kind of, when you're in 2nd and 4, you can extend the clock if you can get those 4 yards, or you might only get 1 or 2, but at least it will mix it up. But what I don't get is that the fact that if you look at the formation changes or the adjustments at halftime, and I think that's a bit of the concern for me right now, is that if you looked at week 1, we were very good at mixing up the run game. We're not just kind of standing on the shoulders of that kind of outside zone, everybody drive to an angle and cut back in the space. As long as it's been sealed off by the tight end or whoever on the backside, you'll get some yardage. And I think there's probably not enough teams doing that. Like the evolution of the Shanahan-Kubiak tree has evolved. The big thing from last year was, Sean McVay is pretty much switched that system to run in power, which is the most difficult one to stop, just because it's man on man, it's physicality, and it's the most dominant team physically wins. And we did some of that week 1, and actually at times it looked okay, and actually Kenyon Green looked good at doing it. But I just think in my head, if we can get back to a serviceable passing offense, pass protection, we still got 345 yards passing through there yesterday. So, we're in a rather privileged position in that sense. But getting back to something they've shown a relative but limited capability to consistently pass, what we did show that at times last year. If we can get to that point, I can probably live by some ineffective run game, but we have to find that effectiveness, I think, in the run game. So I suppose, that being said, Gareth, how confident did you feel on that final 3-minute drive that we were going to do it? Because I didn't really. I felt it was an inevitability, and I don't know if that was just the offense playing better, the faith in CJ, or what was it. But how did you feel in that final 3 minutes when they were driving and looked like they put it together just at the right time?
Honestly, see, when they made that, they stopped the Jags on the 4th down, the one on the 1 yard line, wasn't it, or 1.5 yard line? I thought we were going to win it, totally going to win it. And then when we did next stop, 4 minutes left. You think they're going to run the ball, the Jags, which they had done against us all game. You think, they're going to come down and score, 2-score game, all over. After that it was just like, he's going to do it. Like the game Nico Collins had. Do you know what I mean? CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, how many times did he hit him on that there last drive? It was like unbelievable. So as you're saying there, 100%. I see the difference between the team now and like previous seasons. I know everybody needs a good quarterback, but when you get CJ Stroud after last year, like, is there ever time you think he's going to do it? I know against Minnesota he didn't have the best of games, but one game back 2 seasons? Can you complain for a rookie QB? How long have we been crying out for a QB like that there?
Yeah, no, I think I felt confident we were going to score, and it was just a case of, and in fact, actually, what led to that, and I think more than just the offensive thing, that was the first time all day that we played a complementary football. We didn't go right at the first kickoff. We give, or from the first special team play. Sorry, Sims drops the kick, and you give them an easy walk in, and that kind of like put you on the back foot before you'd even started. You just got them off the field. That's the time to go and score and make it complimentary. We didn't do that until then. And you think of, for 2 guys who got caught out in the passing game all fucking day in terms of Petrie and Eric Murray, they were clear particularly against Christian Kirk. That was a matchup that Jacksonville defined. They were going to go after it, and they were going to keep continuing to do it. But those two guys made pass breakups. Certainly Peach was a pass breakup. I think more of a kind of pleasant or timely interference with Eric Murray on that. There was which stopped the clock twice, gave you plenty of time to then go down the field and score, and you had the luxury of just letting the clock and use your first of the 2 timeouts. We'd lost one because of a bit of a questionable challenge, but we had 2 timeouts there to go and just attack how you wanted to. And I suppose before we go any further, I think you have to give a bit of a shout out, Paul, to Dari from Dari, because he, in some way, we had two big players. I don't know if you've heard, and I'll drop this in on the audio version, but I don't know if you've heard Gruden talking about Forocasi and how he pronounces it, just with his voice is fucking excellent, and I'll drop that in there because it's a good one. But anyway, Forocasi on the line stops it against his former team, and then also against his former team, Darian Gabali goes in and makes a number of plays over the day, 33 yards in total, 2 big third down conversions when we needed it. Throughout the day, one that led to a field goal just before half time, and then one for the game winner with 18 seconds to go. But it showed you at that moment they gave him a couple of runs in the red zone, and they obviously had a package or a 2-minute situation that was set up for him. And I suppose for all the offensive questions you might have about Bobby Slowick, I think we showed that we handled the red zone, that and earlier scores pretty well, Paul. And I think it was probably situationally we were better than structurally, but a shout out to Dari. I think a big day and a game ball from Ryan's after it too. Yeah,
we just looked. I wasn't quite as confident after the stop.
You knew the pain will do that to you. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think I put on Twitter that at that point that we didn't deserve to win it.
Oh, we did. I don't think we did for a long spell. No.
Was absolutely fuming, but yeah, I mean, we just looked. I don't know whether it just looked, or whether CJ made it look more simple, or it was just more simple. I think the Jags didn't help themselves with how they wanted to defend certain things, I'll say. But, there was guys getting open, guys beating a man, getting into space, and it just looked like they were organised, and it progressed really well. And I think the moment we got into their half after on that the final passage of play, I don't think there was going to ever be any other winner at that point. I think everything just went into overdrive. CJ just took complete control of it, didn't he, really? And it went from there. But, yeah, Dari was brilliant. Like you say, a couple of 3rd or 4th down conversions that he had. He had a really good catch on one, which he was just in a gap and caught it and broke a couple of tackles and got over the first down marker and then went further on, didn't he? But yeah, really nice play at the end as well.
Yeah, and I think he's probably put himself in a position actually to get a lot of kind of snaps as just that check down option, because he's been a special team pro, but he showed the ability to evade tackles on a number of occasions and get more, and especially on that 3rd and long after the string of penalties left us in a situation where he beat 2 players and managed to get over the first line marker, first down marker. Sorry. So it was a number of sort of fortuitous moments, I suppose. But Gareth, I suppose for me there was a number of moments. The Tank Bigsby draw play that went 58 yards, and a big shout out to Caelan Bullock who chased him down. If he hadn't done that, I don't think we win the game. That was a big turning point. Was there a moment where you was it that or another moment where you thought we maybe snagged it back from the jaws of defeat? Because there was a number of moments in the second half I thought if they score 7 here, or even 3, in fact, we might not have necessarily we might necessarily won that game, because I think for long spells of the second half, which we'll come on to in a second, we were a distant second for a long part, and I think a big part due to the coaching staff adjustments. But was there any moment that you thought, I don't know if we've got this today?
That was the only moment. Like, once Bigsby was away, like, I think we had the same trouble as we had last year against the run. we have. I think losing Collins more than anybody. I think the centre of our D line, I just think we're too weak there still. And then Bigsby's was like an outside run kind of thing, so he ran away. But Bullock to get back and stop him. Like if he scores there, 10 points clear? Like were we going to score two more than them? I don't think we were. So with that tackle, and then obviously with the fourth down stop and on Trevor Lawrence, it was just like, all right. Before that, even before they stopped Trevor Lawrence, I was like, oh, if they score here, why do they not go for a field goal? Do you know what I mean? I know we'll still put them 6. We still need a touchdown. But when that air stop happened, before that happened, I was more concerned than anything. But once we made that, I was never any doubt we were going to win.
Yeah, I tweeted out that I thought the Stingley PBU was going to be, I thought it was curtains without that, and then all of a sudden it flips to the fourth quarter, so they change ends, and I just assumed that maybe they will kick the field goal and just hope they can play defence out, because up to that point, that would have probably been a kind of a sensible strategy, but then they go for it and they don't get it, and actually Farakaski comes up and makes the tackle and beats his former teammate as well to the point. So that was a bit of historical knowledge, I think, in there, and it's quite a circular league in that sense. But I've seen a lot of criticism of Bobby Slowick, and I think there was a play in the first half which I tried to make a note of, and I'll do my best to explain it. And I think it kind of, in that single play, it was the just after I think it was our second drive. It was the first down. We came out in 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and Diggs had just had the first down prior to that, so we kind of looked like we were moving a bit, and we just scored. I thought, well, you go and score again, get yourself up a score early, then that, you can assert yourself. And we ended up going off the field after this, but it ended up being JJ Taylor motions from the weak side to the strong side to clear out a one-on-one blocker on the weak side. Nico's then in the backfield. He then goes out and CG basically tries to lob a kind of pass into him to sort of just a kind of quick out to the left hand side. It ends up being stopped for a loss. He gets pushed out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage. It wasn't the best throw by CG. Tunsil doesn't do enough to fool the defensive end. It was Hines Taylor, or whatever he calls, Josh Allen Taylor, whatever he calls himself now. I hate when players change their name when they come in the league because it's hard enough to remember them all. But anyway, he doesn't do enough to really kind of make him think he's going to block him. He kind of skips past him. He then misses the DB who goes and makes the tackle on Collins. And then we end up not kicking the field goal, and it ends up being a 3-yard loss. Now, but if you drew that play up and actually does enough, the throw lands in CG from CG and for Nico in stride, it's going to be a one-on-one matchup, and there's no spare man on that side because of the way the formation was laid out. And CJ's running, as long as the blocks are made in front of him, there's 2 blocks and he goes, and it's probably a touchdown. But that goes from being a 3-yard loss to what could be a touchdown for 60-odd yards. So it was drawn out well, and I think it was just the execution of the players that are out there that are letting Slowick down a bit. And I think he's had a lot of criticism, and rightly so, because he's ultimately responsible to have as many quarters as we've had without, to go from scoring in the second quarter, not to scoring another touchdown till 16 seconds before then, with the talent that's on this offensive roster, is inexcusable. I think we can all agree that, Paul. But I suppose there is an element of there's a limit to what they can do if players aren't executing. So how does the coaching staff, or what did Bobby Slowick do that's going to make them more consistent? Because we punted 5 times in a row in the second half. We kicked a field goal, we haven't got the ball started the second half, and then punted 5 fucking times before we scored again. And against good teams, they'll blow you out. That's potentially 5 scores, might be just 3s, might be a couple of 7 swaggered, but that's how you lose games. How do you think this team gets past that, and therefore whether they're in a position to go and get a couple of scores up and make it comfortable, or they're just going to purely hang with the big boys? Because we've got one of them this Sunday. What's the next step, or what's the possible fixes we can get as it pertains to Buffalo and the rest of the season for this offense to be consistent?
Yeah, I think I don't know what the situation is with Tank, whether he's going to be back this weekend or not.
I think he is. Yeah, I saw that earlier. I think he is. Yeah.
You know, I think just not like Nico and Diggs are slow, but just someone with that electric pace that could take the top off things if we really need him to. You know, we'll put some shivers up DBs all over the league, wouldn't it? But and yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff, as we said earlier, you know, that's drawn up really well, and some stuff that worked. And Diggs had a really good reception, but again, just an individual error brought it back, didn't it? And it's, you know, I think if you tidy up some of these things, like you said, not putting yourself behind the chains, not giving yourself third and 20 in places because of penalties, whether that's a hold, whether that's a lineman downfield, whether that's one of these penalties that only we seem to get, or only we seem to commit. You know, I think we're in a position then where you get in 3 and 2, or you're on 2nd and 4, or something like this, and you've got these easy conversions that you can just make, and it just builds momentum. But I think every time we look to start getting momentum, we do something that stops ourselves, don't we? Really, rather than some of the defenses we come across stopping us, we seem to kill ourselves a little bit through.
Yeah, there's an element of consistency there. I think, and I liked how we went to the screen pass to Nico, because that's been an effective play regardless of the situation, regardless of the coverage. He's got an ability to run after catch that's probably, you know, relatively unrivaled. But we need to be on schedule enough that we're not, and improving pass protection, picking up stunts, and having shorter passes to be successful, I think, because the one play that stuck out to me, and I think it was the second 3rd and out, 3 and out in the second half, and it's the one where CG just backs off, and then he just throws it out to Diggs, and he just gets one hand on it just near the first down marker, doesn't quite bring it in. But then when I watch that play back, you actually see that Diggs comes all the way from the opposite side of the field right across the play for that option, which is going to take 5-6 seconds to 5 seconds or so to develop. And I think there was an element of it was a 3rd down, short to medium distance, and that was ended up being the route selection that CG's had to make based on the play design. And look, there was other times in the second half where CG didn't go for the check down, tried to go for something more glamorous downfield, didn't make it, and probably could have had short yards and, you know, live another down. Now he doesn't do that often. With many criticism in this roster, and I don't think CG will be one of them. Particularly, you know, with what he's been asked to do, we've been asked him to do too much at times. But I think there's just some elements there that you were asking him to do too much. But Gareth, I think we just have to take a second to just appreciate not only the maturation but the improvement of Nico Collins. He has more catches over 10 yards than both the full wide receiver cores of Denver and the New England Patriots so far for the 4 games. Now, it's only 4 games. Those teams aren't expected to be challenging a great deal, although the Denver did not manage to find a way to beat the Jets on Sunday there. But I think Nico Collins, whether it's the scramble plays and he finds himself, or whether it's the run after the catch, whatever he's doing, this guy, for albeit the trade up a hell of a lot in terms of later round draft picks and the give up on a future 4th for him to go and get him, but. He's made that contract look very good value, and he looks one of the more unplayable receivers, I think, so far. That certainly from watching this league for the last 10 years, I can remember. And with a level of consistency, I think that's the chilling bit, I suppose, for opposition defenses.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, how lucky are we to get the contract done before the start of the season? Like, if he was still holding out or something, and we were trying to pay him at the end of the year after the first 4 games, like, what kind of numbers are you talking? A lot more than what we're giving them at the minute. But the thing is, I always took him a while to develop. Like, let's be honest, not even last year before, we were talking about him, a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. We still need that wide receiver 1. But he is a wide receiver 1 now. Like, how many better in the league are them at the minute? He makes the hard catches look easy. As you're talking there, but there was one pass, was it over the middle? I can't remember what was. He dived, and he just turned his body at the same time to catch it. But
was that a 2-hand catch?
Yes, the ball didn't.
Yeah, that was just his technique was phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal.
That's what I mean. He called it. Didn't move. The ball didn't move out his hand. On the ground, just just like that's a wide receiver one. Like we haven't had that since Hopkins, have we?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, I think yeah.
So we are. But going back to him, like I think the way he's playing, I think because we have Diggs and we have Dale, it's going to be a lot easier for Collins to do them yards because how many other wide receiver cores in the league are as good as that at the minute? Them three. Like, who do you go with? Who's better? I mean, maybe the Bucks, maybe with Evans, Godwin, maybe the two. There's nothing. Like, imagine we'd have got Mike Evans instead of Stephon Diggs. How good would that be? But talking about Collins, I think he's unbelievable. Hopefully, he's there for many years to come.
Yeah, no, I suppose when you didn't have Tank, I was interested to see who would step in that role, and it was good to see Cade Stover getting a 27-yarder. That was important. I think at that time, he did have Schultz. He's had a bit of a slow start to the season. I think he lacks in the running game at times, and I think that limits his snaps. I think if he was more reliable on the block, and there was a good play where Akers cut it back to the left, and he did seal the edge on that. And I saw somebody tweet that clip out earlier on that, and it's just a mixed bag. I think we missed Brevin Jordan, to be honest. I think he was, when he was coming out in Florida, he was an underrated pass blocker. He never quite showed it until the start of the year, and I think we've really missed that. And we've missed consistency in blocking, I think, to then have a good enough run game where actually we can let these three guys loose, because I don't think we've seen that yet, and that's the frustrating bit, and we'll need to. And I think Diggs will want to do that more than anything, I think, against Buffalo this Sunday. And I think if we're going to win games, we're going to have to find ways to pass protect in a sufficient manner. That doesn't mean there's guys getting free on the easiest of stunts and twists in the middle. And those middle three guys, at times, I just wrote that. I just don't know why they just don't squeeze together, because there's points where there's the three of them, and I know that's not a technical term, and I know that's not great coaching, right? But there's guys getting through spaces between the three of those in the A and the B gaps consistently when it looks like there's no space there, just because they've lost their technique. And how many times do you end up seeing them facing back to their own quarterback, or their numbers facing to the sideline, and they've completely lost the fundamentals of the technique. That from a self-taught layman like me can tell you that if you're facing the wrong way, you're not going to be able to do what you're trying to do. So I would like to see those big three have big games, and it won't happen every week, and they won't all unless we have a 50, 60 attempt game, like say the one against Tampa last year, where it's a consistent throwing match. But there needs to be an element there of one guy steps up another, because I think we can only be so reliant, and we have managed to be reliant just enough to win 3 games where we've not played well in any of them. So I think we can all agree, Paul, that this offense has got a huge ceiling. It's just whether we can fix the fundamentals, the accountability, the execution to reach that, because I think Sunday will be the first test. You can't have 5 punts in a row. You probably can't even have 3 if you want to hang with Buffalo, and they're going to come in sore, battered and bruised, I think, for this game. But very quickly, I'll ask you both, does Sims get cut this morning, and if so, why? Paul, you want to go first?
I'm surprised they let him back on the pitch after the muff punt at the beginning. It was, he's got all the pace in the world, hasn't he? You saw some of the stuff in pre-season where he was returning stuff and looked good. It's them very basic things, isn't it? And that's when you're on the brink on an NFL roster. They're the things that are going to get you cut. That's the type of thing where a coach is going to lose that little bit of trust with you. And that just means you're gone, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah. And Gareth, do you think, is it enough? I thought the second penalty was, or the penalty that he got from Sportsman Corner was a bit weak, to be fair. I don't even think we realised what it was. And it was probably 50-50 in it who sought the contact. But would you come? I always think it's unfair for one mistake, but it does happen.
I wouldn't say they were cut him after the muff punt, because everybody does it. But after the penalty, what was it? 3 minutes to go. What put us to what 5 yard line, 6 yard line, wasn't it? I think that's
Yeah.
the one that might, but rather than the muff punt. But like to bring him out, like after one, I was like kind of disappointed in the coaches. Like I don't think one muff punt and they take him out. It kind of does that tell you that the coaches don't really believe in him to take him out after one punt? Do you know what I mean? Or one return, muff return. Like how many other players would be in that position and still get sent out for the next one to return it? So that kind of tells you what the coaches think in my eyes. To bring in what JJ Taylor as well, that has how many stops this year?
Yeah,
Has
no,
any
I know.
return?
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I think if you put him back in, he does it again, and then it's like, well, yeah, that was inexcusable. It was a miss by the coaches. And I think that's always the fear. I think when they make that mistake, it's take him out. His head's not right. We'll put a shooter pair of hands. It might not give you the best return ability in Robert Woods, for example, but I think there's a more likelihood he'll catch it and not hurt you. And I think it's almost like damage limitation at that point. The sort of panic kind of stretches sets in, and it often you see that. Yeah, I thought they're fair. He's probably not going to do, all the best, not necessarily the best job for you this season. I don't know. He did break that one in the playoff, and I think that's probably what's in people's heads in a big game that he did, and he managed that and kept a roster spot for him versus, somebody like the sixth round draft pick at Louisville, who's not picked up a team, I don't think, so maybe that wasn't the biggest loss, I don't know. But, we kept other players over him who went elsewhere when they got picked up on other practice squads because we released them for this guy. So if you've only got a very narrow span of input and you can't input in that way, he may or may not be here. But is there any credible alternatives on our roster? I don't think so, unless you're going to put Tank back there, who's a little bit fragile at that way. So I don't know. In a pinch, in a playoff game or something like that, would you want to do it? Yeah, I think so. But it's like when you used to put Will Fuller back there. He did score that punt return against Tennessee that time, but you didn't see it as often as you probably would have liked. Or when you used to put Daniel Manning back there, you knew it was serious, right? When it was time to return a punt. So we'll see. It's a bit like a kicker. They lose their spot. You see DeAndre Carter playing for. I would never had him back in any game, ever been in the league after the amount of mistakes he made for us in one season. But yeah, these guys get they have certain skill sets that others don't. So we'll see. Right, defense. I think it's important to call out a couple of things, chaps. Paul, how shit scared should we all be about the secondary? Because it's been a theme in every game that this has got a tendency to get burnt long. I counted a second and 14 in the first quarter. Brian Thomas beats Kamari Lassiter. A third quarter, 1st and 10 play, Kirk jumps through the zone, Bullock misinterprets the route, gets caught out, gets overshot. Those two plays alone on another day should have been 2 touchdowns. You probably lose the game at that point. You think from Indianapolis and at home on Sunday Night Football against the Bears, big plays were missed by opposing quarterbacks, and that was the difference between winning and losing the game. You won't get that on Sunday, I can assure you that. Is the secondary enough to be concerned about their pass coverage ability, because it's showing its head just that little bit more each week, and I think it's going to cost us at some point, and that may well be this Sunday.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's only been some bad quarterback play, really, hasn't it? That's not a label Trevor Lawrence to put up some better numbers really at the weekend. I think the one that you said about with Caleb Bullock is just an error that a rookie makes, isn't it? It's the type of thing where he's coming out to support his cornerback on that side of the pitch, and Kirk's he's a good wide receiver, isn't he? He runs a line into acres of space, and he's just I think I'm still can't believing that he was overthrown by that much, And I think I didn't get to watch much of the Vikings game because I was travelling, but I think that's probably Lassiter's weakest game so far. I think he's looked pretty good in general for us. But yeah, there was a couple of times where he was just beaten, wasn't he? Beaten with some faster feet, and people got past him or just got away from him that little bit, and then it's really difficult to recover. I think there was one on a crossing rate where he just got beaten for pace as well, which got them a first down. And yeah, it's just difficult. But like we said the other week, you go from the Colts game where they were beaten quite a few times and it should have been more, and then same with the Bears, and then this week it is more of a concern than it should be at this point. I'd have thought, especially with the talent we've got back there. So.
Yeah, I just think when Jimmy Ward comes out, I don't think he's been that great. They were keen to extend him. I've not yet seen any reason, and probably the same way I would agree with Tyus Howard as well. I've not really seen a consistent number of games that I could point to that was worthy of an extension. Now, the Tyus Howard was obviously a much bigger and more costly investment than choose up dollars in your cap. But I think, and similarly, we've been quite kind of player friendly in that sense to hand out contracts. I think we maybe misjudged the safety position, if I'm honest, in terms of the depth. Now, it's good that Bullock's out there and he's making these mistakes now, but if you have a savvy vet in front of him that's going to maybe shield him from some of that down in, down out, I don't really think it was going to be Eric Murray. Now, you got your only sack of the day, which segues nicely, Gareth, into, I suppose, this pass rush, considering the investment of 2 first-round picks in Will Anderson and a big contract for Danielle Hunter, that is an investment that needs to be an asset and a driving force in your team imprinting themselves in the game. I don't think we can say that, certainly not on the evidence of Sunday, which was a sort of middle into average offensive line you were going up against. But we had 3 TFLs all day, 1 for Tim Settle, and the 2 others were for DBs. So the front 4 beyond the 4th down stop, I don't think really impacted this game in any meaningful way.
Totally agree with you, but I do think they actually have been okay for the season. What against the Colts? What was it? 7 sacks, 8 sacks they got. So it was. I think this game was maybe a one-off for Anderson and Hunter, but I still go back to it. I think our DTs, our defensive tackles, I think they're non-existent. I know that I can't say had the stop of Lawrence, but apart from that, they were just running up the middle as far as I could see. Like Etienne, Bigsby, Johnson. They just seemed to be making yards every time. Whereas against us, they always seemed to be in the backfield to stop Akers. We weren't in the backfield to stop them at all. And it seemed to be like Petrie and Bullock and that. Making the plays, the tackles for losses. You're saying I don't see it, but it's off because I think Will Anderson's going to be stunning. A number player. So maybe it's just one-off game. Regards Hunter, I know he's much, to be honest with the Vikings. I thought we were going to go. I know instead it would have been a lot better having him and maybe my eyes have done that there. You hear me?
Yeah, no, I suppose there's for me, I just think when you put that level of investment into that side of those positions, they need to have a consistent impact. And I know they kind of got away with one where Donnell should have had him and they didn't. But for me, I suppose when you're, and look, I think the guys they're not names, and I think there was a little bit of here's what you could have had. In the defensive tackle there for, and the name escapes me now. He was in, what was his name, Paul? It was in number 91. He was in San Francisco with Tamiko, and I forgot his name. Armstead, thanks, Gareth. Yeah. So he was kind of who they targeted. I don't necessarily think he had the most flashiest game. Now he certainly caused a lot of havoc and put pressure up the middle because and look, until you watch the 22 back, it's kind of hard to do, which I don't have all that much time to do as I used to. So there may have been some sort of hidden value, and it's hard to pick up on the broadcast version of it. But I think those guys have kind of done quite well in the sense that there's been a lot of the dirty work going on the outside. But I think for me, Will Anderson, his biggest improvement needed to be his hand fighting and his counter moves to people. And it just looked like the pair of them were getting locked up too much at times where you thought, right, if the ball comes out quick, fair enough. There's only so you can only move so far past another 300-pound human being that's in your way. But when it's a 5-second count or a 5-step or 7-step drop, I think you've got a fair chance to at least make a pressure. So yeah, it may have been a one-off game. There may have been a bit of scheming to it, and they were getting the ball out early, quick. So when you've not kind of gotten near the quarterback for sort of 35 minutes of the first half, I can understand that can maybe drain you a little bit. Not seen Jerry Hughes in there much as a rotation, so I don't know if maybe the rotation's a little bit off in there. His snap count was low again. And that may be something that they can look at. But for me, Paul, I just don't think these guys up front, Will and Donnell, are asserting themselves enough in terms of TFLs and in terms of kind of quarterback pressures. Certainly on Sunday they didn't. And again, as we keep sort of looking towards Buffalo this weekend, it's going to be a real test of where this team is and how well they can play given a challenge of a team who's arguably better than them against a sort of top 5 quarterback, unquestioned. You have to be able to have a pass rush, and you have to have 3 or 4 guys that can all do that and come in and do it separate times. We're probably not going to get that for the interior as much. Of these guys, who do you think we can step up and rely on because that's going to be consistent? Because I don't think we've had it in the payback that the investment would have suggested we would have got.
Yeah, I think we still, was it Danico Autry that we're still missing, who's suspended still as well, so we got him.
Yeah, and that's a big major factor.
So
yeah.
we have to factor that in, like you say. But yeah, I think there's been so many. There was some in the Bears game, there was some in the Colts game, definitely yesterday. Lawrence, when he starts seeing something he doesn't like, he does that spin move that he kind of puts himself on the wrong side, and then he loses all whereabouts of where he is on the field. And that nearly led to a safety yesterday with Daniil Hunter getting close to him before he threw it away, which I think arguably could have been called intentional grounding, because I don't think there was anybody in the vicinity of that one. But so if the plays are developing, then they are getting there. But yeah, I mean, it should be shown in numbers, and the amount we've invested in Hunter, he shouldn't be hanging off the elastic parts of the shirts. He should be wrapping these quarterbacks up and getting some sacks. And then that's going to allow, the more pressure they're getting, the more they'll be double teamed, which will support the guys on the interior. And then it's a balance for an offensive line then, isn't it? Do we double team Hunter and Anderson and leave the guys in the middle, or how are we going about this? And then you can flood gaps then with linebackers coming through. But I think somebody else we're missing defensively probably is Chris Harris as well. I think
who's back this week, I believe. So yeah. Certainly activated. Whether this will be too early for him, I don't know. But they'll need to make a corresponding move as well to get him back on, so he drops off. I don't know.
Yeah, and he was a big part of the defence last year in all areas of the game, and as a communicator as well. And I think we might be missing a little bit of that. So, yeah, fingers crossed they just start getting a little bit of luck, beating the odd man, and then things will start to come from it. I think it's a confidence game on that line, isn't it? And if you get 1 or 2, then that can quite easily become 3 or 4, and we go from there. It's just how long it takes to get 1 or 2 is the question, I guess.
Yeah, I think we said this before going into the Minnesota game, Paul, but I think, Gareth, it's going to be one of those games where you probably need to have both sides of the ball arguably playing similarly to high levels if we're going to have a chance on Sunday. Not big into predictions, but if you were to say there's one thing that sticks out in your mind that the Texans have to do if they're going to be a chance on Sunday against Buffalo, what would you say that is?
Put pressure on Allen. Has to be. Like, he's their go-to guy. Do you know what I mean? If he doesn't play, we just stop him playing. I think we win. And that's the truth. Like, I do believe we win if we can get the pressure on him, but let's get the pressure on him is the main thing. Do you know what I mean? I do think Diggs will have a big game. He's that kind of personality, is that kind of thing about him that he just wants to go against his old teams just to do more. So I think he'd be saying to CJ, give me the ball more than the big plays. Yeah. So I'm not going to say I'm confident, but I'm saying if we can put pressure on Allen, like QBs don't want pressure, we can get pressure on him. I think we can see a lot tighter game than maybe you think.
Yeah. And Paul, one thing you think has to happen to give us a chance?
Yeah, I think it probably involves Josh Allen again for me. And maybe pressure for sure, but maybe marshalling him a little bit, not allowing him if things. If he has a play that develops for 2 or 3 seconds and there's nothing he likes, not allowing him to go and march 10, 15 yards downfield like he can do, where he trucks you up because he's a big fella. Not allowing him to do that and getting somebody, whether Aziz does it and almost spies on him for a little bit and then closes him down if he does start to move, but not allowing him then the easy yards, because I think if it does open up, he's probably one of the few quarterbacks that can take it a fair distance while doing everything, not just avoiding people. He's quite happy to try and run through you as well, isn't he? I think so, or jump over you as he's done a few times. So I think we've got to do that. I think that would be the main thing for me.
The bit that just stands out in my head, I think, when you watched how they lost that game by some way, was that Baltimore and we're obviously not at the same levels of that, but they just strangled the life out of the game, and they ran the ball down the throat, and they managed to keep Allen off the field. And I think the best one I can remember on the road when we went to Kansas City in 2019 when we won, and I was in the stands there that day, and it was one of those ones that you thought, actually, we're on the cusp of doing something. We're on our way. It was kind of the feeling when you came out of the stadium that day. And I think, and the reason why was because Carlos Hyde just kept running the ball, and you could see that they had the better of them up front. Now they didn't have Chris Jones that day, so that helped. Oliver and a couple, and they've got a couple of kind of semi-standout pieces, but there's nothing up front there that I think petrifies you. But I think anybody should petrify us in the way in which is trying to assert ourselves in the game so far. So I suppose just don't go behind early and find a way to run the ball, even if it's just 70, 80 yards that complements your passing game, similar to this week. I think we'll be okay if we just don't go behind, and when we get the ball, we stay functional and we keep moving it. And if you kick field goals every so often, that's fine. Just don't get behind the chains, but just don't get yourself in an executional mess where you just slip out the game, because if they get a couple on you, it's curtains at that point. And I think they're certainly playing well until last night, and then you find a team that puts a bit of a blueprint out on you, but then they want to bounce back, because losing 2 in a row is something that D'Amico Ryans has done a great job of not doing that. But they'll be the same. They've got aspirations that are partly in this revised scheme that kind of saw from Brady, kind of, is it Brady? What's the guy's name? Young guy that was at Carolina. That's now the offensive coordinator there. He was. He's the offensive coordinator now of the Bills, and he got moved over there. The name fucking escapes me. Not usually as bad as this, but anyway, he went over there. I'm tempted to say Joe Brady. I think that's right. He was the LSU offensive coordinator when Burrow and Jamar Chase won the championship, and then he went to Carolina, and then we interviewed him for a head coach gig here. But he certainly found a way that works for that offense, and they've actually kind of used their quarterback, but elevated a broader level of talent around them, rather than just trying to siphon all the targets through our very own Diggs. So let's hope he can look like he's made the right choice, because he went back to Buffalo, didn't necessarily get the revenge game he might have wanted there, but I suppose it's probably less fresh and is less raw. But it's just going to be a case of functionality on both sides of the ball, and don't get caught out, because I think if we can keep it close to late, I think this team's shown a way to win close games, and I think we'd be remiss unless it's, a number of mistakes by them on their side, or some heavy-handed turnovers that will give you some advantage, that this game is going to be close. And I think that's what gives me the confidence, if we can get to that point, that we can win close games, because we've shown a propensity to do that. But it's the ability to keep it close throughout the first 3 quarters and get down to the fourth quarter, and then it's who takes wins at that point. But we just have to keep ourselves in the race, and I think that's the bit for me, that don't let yourself get trodden out early by your own mistakes, because there's no way you're going to keep up with the big boys if you're doing that. But any final thoughts, chats, for me out here?
No.
No,
Hopefully
not
things
from.
are just going they're going, improving every year. Like it's not going to be a quick fix. I don't get, no matter what anybody says. Like I know we improved last year, but if we're improving every year, maybe in another 3-4 years time, maybe we're contenders then.
Yeah, I think we've probably slipped away from that contender. I think until you can cut out the basic errors, you're not going to be a contender. And I've probably sort of tempered my expectations of where I thought we'd be, because you kind of thought, well, you get to level 1 year and you just top on some top end talent and that'll get you to the next level. But it's not as simple as that, Paul. So what's your final words here before we get out of here?
No, you said about being contenders or not, but I think it's quite easy for us to win 6 games this season. I think the rest of the AFC South isn't looking too handy, is it really? Especially with Richardson being injured again. You know, I don't know when. Can't remember our schedule off the top of my head when we play them again, but hip injuries for mobile quarterbacks aren't really a good thing, are they? No, I just think it's. I think if we half the amount of penalties we're giving away on the line, and some of the ones that are really hurting us and calling back plays, I think we probably look an even stronger team than we are really. And then you got wide receivers posting even bigger numbers, Stroud posting even bigger numbers than he is because things aren't being called back. And I think the conversation changes very quickly in this league, doesn't it? And I think it would change more positively for us if we could manage to do that and turn it round.
Yeah, and I always kind of had this game as a potential 50-50, but I didn't think that about Minnesota. So when you put the two together and if you lose both, there's a point where we'll have to get, when we hit certain stretches of games, that we're going to have to be sort of 2 games above 500 if we don't want to slip back into that sort of wild card kind of area. So I would love to see us do it. I really would, and it would just kind of push us looking up rather than looking over our shoulder. But until we can fix all these basic stuff, guys, I just don't see it. I don't think there's enough feasibly to see it. But there is a more than plausible outcome that you can just not make mistakes and make it difficult for yourself, and then actually just look forward and play well. And when you play well, this team might be quite dangerous. But until you see it, that's not who you are. So the guys have got to do. It's going to be a big coaching job this week. But I think ultimately it's time to deliver in certain areas of this team that we've not seen yet. Otherwise, we won't have a chance with Sunday. But thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Paul, for joining us on this Tuesday night. I'm going to have to start checking my emails a bit more because I realise we're on the same time as D'Amico Ryan's press conference. So probably not going to be that people tune in. But we will get the audio out. Hopefully this has worked. No clue. I'm trying to test out some technologies to see what is worth paying for and what's not. But thank you very much for listening to the Turn for What podcast again this week. Please like, share, and do all that good stuff. Get the algorithms turning. Bring all the good people back that used to listen that we kind of let down by not being here. But enjoying it. It's good to have real football to talk about and not weird stuff all going on off the field. So it's a pleasure and enjoy it. Thank you for the guys for the time. Thank you for listening. And here is to a win on Sunday.